Welcome into another edition of Press Coverage. We are live tonight, 8 o'clock. Nothing else on TV for you to watch, nothing else for you to do. So you're going to check out this show, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. That is John Bauman. That is Evan Rogers. That empty space is currently not Adam Smith. We'll see if he joins us tonight. But we're going to talk a little bit about Mack Brown's press conference on Monday. I think it's relevant. And Evan, I'll get you in here first. Mack Brown has said all year that this team would be better at the end of the year than it was at the beginning. And he's literally said it since the spring and July. Here comes Adam joining us. I'll get him in on the comments. Just to catch you up, Adam, talking about Mack's comments about how this team will be better at the end of the year. But, Evan, I wanted to get your take before I play these clips. I mean, we've said a lot about Mack, and one of the first comments in the questions on the message board is, "Are we going to talk about a coaching transition?" So let's stay in the present, as Mack said on Monday. Evan, he was right. I mean, or pessimist Evan, is it just the schedule is working out for Carolina this far?
I can say both. I've been very critical of Mack this year and in some of the ways that he has approached the season, and I do need to give credit where credit's due. And I think the two performances they put on against Virginia, against Florida State, were not performances I was particularly expecting, namely the Virginia one. But they're ones that you got to give the coaching staff a lot of credit. Those were games that UNC was prepared to plan. They were ready to play both of those games. And the idea of this team finishing better all along, I think, is part to do with the schedule. Let's not act like Florida State's a world beater or Virginia is a world beater. I know Virginia picked up a good win at Pitt the other night, but Eli Holstein got knocked out of that game. So who knows how that game ends if he's able to play the whole game. And then if I was looking ahead to these three games in the home stretch, you have Wake Forest, who is 88th in FPI. You have NC State, who is 73rd in FPI, and Boston College, the best team that UNC plays, is 59th in FPI, and their head coach today said that their starting quarterback is stepping away from the team for a couple of days because he was upset about getting benched. So, schedule's there. It is wide open for UNC to take full advantage and end this year 8-4. And I think that is something that is not something many people believe in the midst of that 4-game losing skid. It's something that I think this coaching staff has done well in terms of just getting this team together and up to speed. I think a big thing that's really helped this UNC team in the back half has been of getting healthy. They talk about the offensive line getting healthy, Aiden Banfield getting healthy. You can say to an extent that this team has had a little bit of injury luck, good injury luck. I mean, all 5 of their starting offensive linemen in the opener are still healthy right now. That's not the case for a lot of teams. I mean, watching that Florida State game, it was like they led the country in different starting offensive line combinations this season just because of the injuries they've had up front. And then on the defensive end, I mean, Rucker obviously missed the middle of the season, but now he's healthy. So that defensive line is fully healthy. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think the coaching staff, Mack Brown, certainly does deserve credit for, bringing Jacoby Criswell along further and getting the defense to turn its play around. But I think you also have to recognize, when the college football playoff rankings come out tomorrow, and I assume Pittsburgh is not going to be ranked, there will not be a ranked team that UNC has played this entire season. So the schedule definitely plays a role in there as well.
I think it does. And Adam, I want to play this first clip because I thought it was pretty funny. And it's Mack responding to your question about about talking a lot about a bowl talk. And I agree with you. It's kind of premature at this point, but let's hear what Mack had to say.
And they're real smart. They wouldn't have gotten in here, and they can count, so they know. I mean, it's not hiding, but no, we are. We feel like we have a chance to win the last 3 games, and the way college football is, as crazy it is, we obviously have a chance to lose it. We could have won 7 or 9 as easy as we could have won 5, and I put that on our coaches. I've told them that. I said that's it. Coaches can put it on players. coaches are supposed to get the players motivated and ready to play. That's our jobs. So we never put it back on the players. But we're planning on winning every one of them, and we're planning on going to a bowl. So that's what we talk about, winning. And my total focus is.
Can't get those things out of there. Adam, Mack Brown said they can count, buddy.
We're planning on winning every one of them.
It is interesting, though, the sort of shift in that second clip I'll play in a minute is keeping on that same theme, but I'm a little surprised at how much they've talked about bowl games. And then if folks have not watched, Will Hardy today said it's all Wake Forest. We talking Wake Forest. Anything beyond that is not. So where are we here with the messaging, and does it even matter ultimately, the way Mack Brown's framing it, I think?
Well, TA, I think first of all, I was thinking as we were listening to that, the whole reason we have that soundbite is because I did ask him that question because, I mean, how many times did he say bowl the other day? Like, it seemed like it was ringing in my ears. Bowl, bowl, bowl. When we play in the bowl, we're getting our roster set for the bowl, and you got to do your roster management for the bowl. And I'm like, I mean, y'all haven't qualified for a bowl yet, but you talk about the messaging. I mean, it sure seems like the word bowl is a part of the message right now as they come out of the bye week and they head into the final 3 games of the regular season, which is Evan so nicely laid out. As I texted the young man today, everything seems like it's coming up Carolina. I mean, you see the shenanigans going on at BC, and Wake just lost at home to Cal and had 4 turnovers, I believe, the other night in Winston, and was Hank Bachmeier was sacked 7 times, I believe. So yeah, it seems like the word bowl is part of the messaging. I don't know if we should do this now. I know we're just getting warmed up. I actually did some research rather than flying in off the top of my bald spot. I have some research. We can get into it a little later if you want me to. I did a little like how many bowls Mack is actually responsible for in UNC football history. He's taken them to quite a few, and they're 1 win away from what would be their 6th straight bowl game. I know they have not been to the Rose Bowl, or the Sugar Bowl, and there's 2 Mayo Bowls in there, but 1 more win against this cluster of opponents, and they'll be going to their 6th straight bowl under Mack 2.0.
John Bauman, get in here, man. You're not just going to ride on the side saddle. You're going to speak.
Well, first of all, Adam, I have to say your Mack Brown impression needs a little work. I love you, but I got to say we could tweak it a little bit. You're on the right spirit there, but no, I'm just kidding there. I think the bowl is such an important part of the messaging for this team this season because there's a kind of piece that goes along with that, which is winning the bowl game. I think finishing seasons on a high note has been a struggle the last few seasons for North Carolina. Getting to a bowl and most importantly, winning that bowl game, I think would go a really long way for program building and Mack Brown putting this program in a better position than he left it as he first came in as part of this Mack 2.0 stint. So I guess that's sort of why he's emphasizing the bowl game so much, recognizing the milestone that it would be to get to a bowl for this football program, but also really trying to emphasize for his roster the importance of finally winning a bowl game, given UNC struggles in the postseason in Mack 2.0.
2.0. I don't know if I've heard it referred to 2.0. That's some new age stuff. 2.0, man. It's a point, not a dot. Let me play this second clip and make sure I can play the right one. I believe it was our friend Art asking Mack about, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but asking Mack about the rest of the season and all that. Here's what Mack had to say.
The last 3 games, started with this weekend, and then having the best record that we've ever had. and winning a bowl game for the first time in a while, and winning 9 games. That's my total focus right now, which is what I said before the season. We didn't have much chatter. We weren't supposed to be any good. Nobody even considered us being in the top 25. And then we beat Minnesota, and everybody said, well, this is a little better than I thought. And then we win 2 more, and they were okay, and then we got blown out, and they said, they're awful, so that we'll drop them. That's just what happens in our world, modern day. But I have to be the one that keeps trying to push to do the positive, not the one that dies and lives on every moment of every play, because these are kids and they have real lives and they got mental health and they got school and I'm responsible for them. So if I can't stay strong and positive, then I'm not doing my job.
Now that, Evan, I'm coming to you on this. Those comments right there are sort of the answer I wanted to give to the message board poster to talk about a coaching transition. You can't do that in season. You got to, especially when you've got opportunities laid out in front of you. And it was interesting, and let's talk about this, and we're not going to keep folks here tonight too terribly long, but I do think it was relevant. Mack talking about roster management, talking about planning for a bowl roster management, talking about spring roster management. When you're a coach or you're in a job, you don't just, like, if you think you're going to leave or if you're going to leave, you don't just lag at the end, especially when you're concerned about legacy, Evan. And sort of speak to that aspect of this Mack Brown quote, because the legacy is up until the point where you're no longer there. And it's all a part of it, whether or not you leave or not. You have to work to the end of the day and handle it. And I think Mack's doing that and staying positive doing that. And that's to his credit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly sounds like, as I was joking around with one of my buddies yesterday, it doesn't sound like a coach who's going to step away at the end of the year. When you listen to how he talked about the roster management aspect of figuring out, maybe Caleb Hood could be a redshirt next season. Or this season, and have his eligibility preserved, and thinking about who's going to play in the bowl and who may enter the portal and who may be getting into the portal, that aspect of the portal and how all that works. And I think you do have to give Mack credit there. He is someone who, for the past, ever since he came back, really, his age has always been used against him, whether it's in recruiting or just in conversation. And he does come off as someone who is not, in a lame duck tenure or has one foot out the door. He comes off as someone who is, fully bought in to what he wants to accomplish with UNC and what UNC wants to accomplish on the football side. And when he came here, he talked about the idea of kind of bringing UNC football back to where it was when he was first here. I don't think maybe he's reached those heights so far, but I don't think you can deny he has undoubtedly raised the floor of this program. I know you, Tommy, like to say that UNC is an 8-win football program. In reality, it's really a 6-win football program. If you look at the numbers over the year, they average about 6 wins a year. And if this season ends in the way that we're discussing it potentially could, with 8, maybe 9 wins, I mean, are you going to move on from that if he doesn't do it himself? I don't think you can. I mean, this is, at the end of the day, this is UNC football we're talking about. This isn't Alabama. This isn't Georgia. This isn't Clemson. This is UNC football. And I think you do have to give him credit there and how engaged he has seemed throughout this entire season in a year that I think we can all agree on is probably one of the more mentally draining and taxing years, from all the way to the end of that James Madison game to where we are now and everything in between. And he comes off as someone who's truly focused and engaged, on this home stretch.
Adam, your thoughts? I did find it funny that y'all were debating the old people in the room, and Mack looks at me and says, "Who's another old that needs to ask a question?" Tommy, you have a question? That was a fun moment and a hit to the old confidence. But Adam,
it was a sign of respect, TA.
Yeah. I should have said, "Wait a minute, Mack, is age nothing but a number?"
The olds kept cutting me off that day. I kept getting cut off by the olds.
It was rolling in there for sure. But Adam, to continue this theme, looking ahead, looking, down the home stretch, you got to stay positive if you're North Carolina, and I think Mack has done a good job of that. But I think one reason the fan base is sort of having some consternation is they're used to losing these games at the end of the season. Somebody asked me on the message board, and I'd like your take on this, Adam, because you've been around a long time. Somebody said, Matt can't win the big games. And I said, well, how many truly big games have they played in? Florida State in 97 was huge.
Judgment Day.
It's not the big games that they haven't been able to win. It's these type games. It's Virginia. It's Georgia Tech. It's you're 9-1 and you lose to crap teams. Those are the games that have been the problems. That's why these last three certainly throw up some red flags, Adam. What do you think?
I think if we somehow were able to invent a machine, maybe John could do it because he's a very intelligent young man. His assessment of my Mac impersonation aside, I think it would be fascinating to psychoanalyze where this UNC football fan base is right now, because obviously these last three games look winnable. You see some of the comments over here. Our guy Brian Evans, Mac is talking himself into realizing that he's the best coach available. We've been traveling a lot lately. TA, obviously, we were in the Kansas City airport, getting out there a couple days ago, and waiting on our man, the living legend himself, Jim Hawkins' camera bags to come through. And some fellas from Eastern North Carolina, Williamston, North Carolina, ambled up to us, and one of them said, "Are you Adam Smith?" to me, which, that went over well with the entire group, me, Jim, Jeremiah. But anyway, we get to talking, and we're obviously talking about the UNC basketball game coming up against Kansas. And one of the guys goes, "Well, what are they going to do with Mac?" to me, And then we stood there and we talked about it for about 5 minutes. And that group, I hope I'm not mischaracterizing them or misremembering, as Roger Clemens would say. But one of the guys said, "Well, you know what? If they can finish 8-4 and if they can beat that team in red," and he sort of trailed off. And, I think there is a section of people who that NC State game could be gigantic in terms of their opinion of where this program is headed or isn't headed, or if it's in a holding pattern or, what's going on. Granted, if you lose to Wake Forest and BC, that might not mean anything. And that BC game could be tricky too, even without Castellanos running around. But I'm not answering your question. I just think that the opinion is all over the place. And sure, if you're the 2024 UNC Tar Heel football team, you have a ton to play for. I mean, 4 weeks ago you were 3-4 overall. You were winless in the ACC at 0-3, and now you've got a chance to keep playing well. I mean, think about the way they're playing on defense, and finish with a good record. I do think I'll hush because I'm going long here, but I do think when you're talking about Art with the question that he'd asked, I think it was confusing for some people in the room when Mac said something like "finished better than we've ever finished." I just think he meant that they've sort of fallen off a cliff the last couple of years, and maybe he was talking winning percentage, because if they did finish 9-4, that would be better than 9-5 when they went 2 years ago. So. Yeah, I think in the moment, there's a ton to play for, and there's a whole lot of other periphery stuff, circling above. You know what I'm saying?
And I think about the building blocks on the roster too, because I think that's a big part of the calculus for me, what to do with Mack Brown. And it does feel like there's a young nucleus of talent that's building on both sides of the ball. Bo Atkinson was an absolute beast against Florida State. He was incredibly impressive. I listened to Amari Campbell's press conference today. When he said that he was a true sophomore at 19 years old, I was kind of taken aback there. I mean, for him to be 19 years old and to be that mature and to play consistently as well as he's playing at the linebacker position, that's a big building block for you. In the secondary, Caleb Koss, you can throw him out as a young building block. Offensive line, Aiden Banfield as a building block. So when you're starting to evaluate, what should UNC do with the head coach position, I think a lot of it depends on how the roster continues to develop over the rest of the season. I talked about last time I was on press coverage how concerned I was with the experience levels on defense. They were just playing so many older guys. This was a really top heavy defense, it felt like, in terms of just having a lot of graduating seniors. But if they're able to show these next 3 games some more of that depth and some more young guys come along, kind of validating Jeff Collins' work on defense, that's a big notch for me in the keep Mack column.
Yeah, I mean, I just think you got to let the season play out. We'll see what happens. Adam's point about there's just so much floating around, but I think some of the suggestions that the press needs to ask, all these questions about when are you leaving and all this, is just damaging to the team you say you follow. And I think they've done a good job focusing and keeping it up on that. This is Press Coverage, Inside Carolina's Tuesday night live show with the beat writers from Inside Carolina covering everything. Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com, our sponsors. Go visit them on East Franklin Street if you're in town. If the game's at 8 and you get town by 12, you got plenty of time to go to Johnny T-Shirt on Franklin Street and buy all the swag you need. It's supposed to be a little cold. You need to go take care of all of that. And if for some reason you can't get there on Franklin Street, go see them at JohnnyT-Shirt.com. National guys pay the bills. Come back for the wrap of press coverage. All right, boys. Our other sponsor, too. Let me go ahead and do that. Matt at congruity.com. Get your small to mid-sized business assessment. Let them grow your small business. Triangle Business Journal had an article about the best small businesses in the area, in the state, and it's worth looking at. And I'm sure Matt at congruityhr.com can hook you up and help you get into that list. So go visit them for all your needs and tell them Inside Carolina sent you. Let's keep this one tight, boys. It's the home stretch. Let's do it this way. John, I'm gonna put you on the hot seat. 3 games left. What's Carolina's final record as we sit here on November 12th?
Well, look, when the season began, I picked UNC to go 8-4. Now, was I wildly wrong? Might I end up maybe even getting basically every single game wrong in the game-by-game selection? Possibly. The Minnesota game, I picked against the Tar Heels. James Madison, Florida State, all up and down, I've been picking wrong here. But I am still as we sit here today on November 12th, I am still holding strong with my original pick of 8-4. And I think that's crazy to say, but I look at this team, and this team is playing some of the best football that they've ever played. I saw the stat that UNC put out this week that really stood out to me in terms of balance. UNC has an average of 247 passing yards per game and 201 rushing yards per game. North Carolina is one of 12 teams in the nation to currently average over 200 yards rushing and passing this season. Just one of 5 Power 4 teams to do so. So on that side of the ball, you're incredibly balanced. You have Amari and Hampton, who's having an amazing season. And then defensively, we've all talked about it already, how strong this team is playing. So I am sticking with my original prediction. I'm going 3-0 to finish out the season where we sit today.
No pictures on the scorecard, John. It doesn't matter how you got there. I think you picked James Madison to beat Carolina, though, didn't you?
So it's funny that you mentioned that. I really thought about it hard before the season because, everyone can say this now, revisionist history, but I thought James Madison was ranked higher in some of the advanced metrics than people realize. People just hear James Madison, even though they had such a great season last year, people don't necessarily think about how good they are. However, I did pick UNC. I kind of went with the crowd on that one. Same with Florida State. You're not going to believe me, Tommy, but I wasn't so high on Florida State. But Jason Staples was right there. And I knew if I picked against Florida State in that game, he would have said something. So I'm blaming that one on Jason Staples' presence in the pregame, in the preseason.
You realize this is virtual, right? He wasn't really there. A lot of people think we're at the IC mansion and we're all in different rooms.
That's right. I agree with what Sean put in the chat. I had James Madison putting up 69 points, not 70. So that's where my prediction accuracy came in there.
Adam, what do you think of this last month, 3 weeks of the season? I'll let you get this word and then I'll let Evan close us out. I think that it's we joke around about the 8 wins is pretty good around here, but actually he said 8 or 9 is pretty good around here. And I think if they can get to 9, I think it's been a pretty good season. I think I had them 9-3, so that would be perfect. But anyway, Adam, your final thoughts here. Bowl. And we're not talking about minute. Talking about bowl season.
Deep cut there. R.I.P. Minute Bowl.
Absolutely.
R.I.P. Dikembe Mutombo. Finger wag.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. I'm thinking about that classic photo of Muggsy Bogues running around Minute Bowl's ankles back in the day. TA, my bald head tells me that I should say that this UNC football team is going to finish 7-5. Because I just feel like, there's got to be a loss in there somewhere. Heck, there might be more than one, obviously. But I mean, just the way this thing feels, the way they've looked, I understand how bad Florida State is. But I thought they looked really good at Virginia, and I thought they looked really good in Tallahassee. I'm going to say they finish 8-4. I'm going to say they win the final 3. My picks sometimes are terrible, but yeah, I think they're going to beat Wake Forest. And then the Beast. I'm looking at the schedule right now. I'm just nothing. I'm going to say 8-4. I think something to remember here, or something. I think I asked Willie Lampkin today or somebody. I was thinking about it. So this Carolina football team has played nine games. It's mid-November, but the way the schedule has been arranged and the frequency that these bye weeks have come into play the last, here in a little bit with 2 of them, I feel like it's a pretty fresh football team for mid-November. I mean, it's going to be November 16th when they play Wake Forest, and I think they're pretty dang fresh here coming into the finish. I certainly don't think they're limping into this finish. So I'm gonna go 8-4. Let me pop open my Word document and see if there's any. I guess I don't have anything that I could add. I was gonna say in relation to our bowl discussion with bowl. Mack has taken UNC to 11 bowls if you count 1998 because he coached that whole season, even though he was gone to Texas by the time they played the Gator Bowl. That is 29% of the bowl appearances in UNC football history. They've been playing football since 1888. The first bowl game they ever went to was 1947. Choo-Choo Justice was on the team. So, no matter how you're feeling about the Maxter these days, it looks like he is 1 win away from adding to that total. And heck, I'll say 8-4, but I very well could be wrong.
You got to love a confident picker. Evan, close us out, man. Let the youth, just like I did in the press conference, I deferred to the youth for you to close us out. What's this home stretch look like in your pessimistic ways?
I'm agree with the panel. I'm gonna go 8-4, and I've got 3 names for you and why I think they're gonna win out these last 3 games. It's Hank Bachmeier, Grayson James, and CJ Bailey. Those are the 3 quarterbacks that UNC is gonna have to go up against, so long that Castellanos isn't the starter by the time they go to BC next weekend. I don't think Hank Bachmeier scares you. He's thrown, I think, 8 picks in the last 5 games. Grayson James is a guy who transferred in from FIU to Boston College, and he wasn't the starter at FIU last year. And CJ Bailey is a really talented true freshman who has had some really impressive games and really impressive stat lines for NC State this season. and he's had 4 games where he has been over the national average in quarterback rating. The national average is about 60. That's about your replacement level QBR. The Greek rifle, Kaliakmanis, is actually the guy who's like the middle of the country in QBR at Rutgers. He's got like a 60.2 average on the season. So there's been 4 games where CJ Bailey was over that mark. It was Cal, Stanford, Louisiana Tech, and Syracuse. And I don't think any of those teams are better than UNC, really. You can maybe argue Syracuse, but I think they've kind of teetered off here as of late. So I think UNC has, like we've said, just 3 opponents that are very beatable, and I think they're probably going to be favorites in all 3 of these games. I think the health of this team, like Adam says, it's funny. They do feel like a fresh team at the end of the season, which is exactly opposite of what you think about. I was just thinking in my head, the 3 games that Cayman Rucker has been healthy, UNC has 22 sacks, and they're probably allowing like 14 points per game on defense because it's Florida State, Virginia, and Minnesota. So this is a totally different team than what you saw in that losing streak. And I think they're in a good headspace. If you compare it to some of the previous seasons, you could just feel the bottom just come out of those teams, right? I mean, going into that NC State game, you kind of could tell this team is checked out. The year prior, you could tell once the losing streak really got going, you're like, this Clemson game could get ugly, or, the bowl game. So I think it's the opposite for this team. I think you have a lot of players like John and Adam have mentioned that are playing for a lot. And there's some young players like Amari Campbell, who's playing some really good football right now. It's interesting. Jeff Collins said Amari Campbell's wearing the green dot, which surprised me. On defense, he's the one with the helmet communication. It's not Power Eccles. And I think on the flip side, offensively, you've got players on the offensive line. You've got a Jacoby Crizzle who's starting his first season. You don't think that guy wants to play for something toward the end of the year? And I think that all just leads to a strong finish for UNC. And again, something that, like we've all said, 8-4 is very good around UNC. Like, I know that upsets UNC fans, but accept that. That is a good season for this program. And it's a season that people should be happy about if it does end up happening. And I think they'll go 8-4.
Especially if you tack it with a win over, as Adam said, those guys said, that team in red. John B., you can get one thing, and then Adam wants to wish somebody a happy birthday that we must do. But John B., what you got?
It's just a thought exercise here. If UNC finishes as strongly as Evan and I, and to a certain extent Adam, predict, this could be, in a weird way, an off-season of stability for UNC, because you know who your quarterback is going to be next season. Chris Wells locked in. The offensive line has a lot of returners. Both the coordinators you feel like would come back if UNC finishes this season on this winning streak. And then you're just looking around compared to some of the recent off seasons where there was turnover after losing an NFL quarterback like a Sam Howell or Drake May, turnover at the coordinator position, switching out defensive coordinators, things like that. In a weird way, this could be one of the most stable off seasons for UNC football if they win out these last few games. So there's a lot on the line here as UNC comes down the closing stretch. But Adam, let's talk a little bit about our birthday celebration here.
I appreciate it, guys. I'm not trying to keep everybody. And just, I saw a question about Max Johnson in the chat. I mean, I don't know if Max Johnson will ever walk right again, much less play football. But I mean, I have no doctor's diagnosis there, but we need to catch up with him. I was thinking about him today. But yes, just real quick to get us out of here before the Cooper Flag show comes on. I wanted to, Tommy, appreciate you giving me a chance. I wanted to wish our photographer, Jim Hawkins, a very happy birthday. His birthday is tomorrow, November 13th. We love him dearly, and I wanted to shout him out. I know his sons, his friends listen to the show. So I believe Jim watches the show from time to time when he can. He's a very busy dude, but just wanted to say happy birthday. Sometimes Jim doesn't get the FaceTime like this on a show like this. Sometimes, you don't see his name by stories and things, but integral part of the IC machine. I mean, he's a living legend, team player. I love him dearly. He's the best. He's our guy. And, we go all these different places. We were just in Memphis. We were just in Lawrence, Kansas. We were just in Charlottesville. We were just in Tallahassee. And Jim is leading the way, as you all know. I mean, he knows everywhere to go. And in all seriousness, he has a fabulous sense of direction. He can go someplace one time and go, I think you're going to take this left up here. Like he knows. He really does. So I just wanted to say happy birthday, Jim Hawkins, real quick. And, those of you who have his number, be sure you contact him tomorrow.
Pretty awesome there, Adam. Hawk's the man. And if you don't look at the photo galleries on Inside Carolina, go do it. I mean, the quality of work is ridiculous, especially the work from Kansas and Fog Allen Fieldhouse. It is worth the price of admission on Inside Carolina to look at the photos that Hawk is able to do. Nice shout out. Shout out to John Bauman for joining us tonight. Shout out to Evan Rogers and shout out to Adam Smith for making it a foursome here. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity, our sponsors, and shout out to everybody that always comes around, especially the usuals. You know who you are, and bring a friend. Stay tuned to Taylor Vipolis and Joel Berry. Drops tomorrow. We'll have the Game Plan podcast drops live Thursday night at 9 p.m. and then Inside Carolina Live from a chilly Bowls lot on a Saturday night from 5 to 7. Should be a fun time out there. Need to have a big Bowls lot tailgate. Need to finally have a big Bowls lot tailgate. Perfect night to do it. Folks want fall football weather. You're going to get it on Saturday night. Everybody else, stay safe. We'll see you next time.